Everybody, welcome to Agency Automators. We're doing a live hangout. This is totally meant to be just for funsies. It's the day before Thanksgiving in the United States, and I'm lucky enough to have the week off on vacation, and I'm kind of bored. So I'm bugging all my friends to hang out, and we're going to talk about some cool code. Robin, I think if you want to show off Tagmapper a little bit.
Sure.
I haven't seen you play with it live. And for anyone who hasn't seen Robin Lord's really cool tool, it'll help you debug your Google Tag Manager setup. If you've got anything even remotely complex, this will save you some major tracking headaches, and is totally worth checking out.
Nice. Yeah, no, feel free. So yeah, this is Tagmapper. Actually, similar to Noah, I had some days off and incapable of sitting still. So this was the result. The kind of background behind it is I was working with some clients on the analytics side, and they had a moderately complex tag manager setup. And one of the things that I really just don't like in general is any work where we're relying on an individual to just have a really deep understanding of an account or a setup in order to avoid problems. It's not great from a staffing perspective. Like, it's not great for anyone to be relying on a small number of individuals, but it's also not great from a quality of work perspective in general and an efficiency. So we started to look at trying to get a bit better about this and get a better idea of how it was all set up. And initially we thought, well, this is essentially a documentation problem. This is, we're in many ways treating the client's tag manager account as a part of their stack. And so we should have the same kind of policies and principles at work. But as soon as we started to look at it, we quite quickly realized that that's actually a mammoth task and potentially not that efficient either. Because we've got essentially lots of these different separate functions which are running very independently of each other, but sometimes in a quite kind of interconnected, independent way. So the idea behind Tagmapper is we just take the markup of your Google Tag Manager account, ingest it, go through it because it's all in JSON format. We can export it direct from there, and then map out the connections between them. So I'm going to just click here on the least user-friendly part of this interface, which is the anonymize your data button, which I think is something that I'm the only one who's ever going to use. And then I'm going to select a JSON file. So what's happening at the moment, like some fairly simple JavaScript, we had a div here that we've pushed beneath the screen.
Yeah, sure. Pretty simple JavaScript.
Oh, this stuff is both not basic and also not me. But like the first animation was just a div that we've pushed beneath the screen that reveals this. This is a HTML5 canvas.
Yeah. And
what's running here is Sigma.js, which there is a pretty slick site for, actually. It's created by this guy, Alexis, and I think someone else as well. Yeah, he's got a couple of collaborators there as well. This library is great, I have to say. It's really flexible and really, really well extended. Like, there's a bunch of other libraries that interact with it too. Basically, anything I started to think, oh, this would be good, there was a way to do it.
Yeah.
So all that happens here at the start is we take all of the different parts of the tag manager account. So we consider each variable, trigger, and tag to be a node on this graph. And tag manager, tag manager tells us how everything is connected through relatively consistent markup. So if a trigger is referencing a variable, there will be, exactly as you see in the interface, the kind of double braces and then the variable name, and then finishing off with double braces, similar when we're referencing a trigger from a tag. So what we do is we go through all of the variables and all of the triggers and all of the tags and try to work out the connections between them. And that's how we create these kind of edges that you see on the graph. The interesting thing there actually ended up being, I expected it to be fairly consistent in terms of certain kind of dependencies. So I thought, okay, like if we start by going through all the variables, by the time we finish the variable list, we're never going to need to create another variable node. So we've got no risk of, because the whole thing falls over if you try to create a line from something that doesn't exist to something that does, understandably. Like you can turn off that error, but it's not really something you want to do because it probably should fall over if you're trying to do something like that. And it turned out there were a few things that Tag Manager kind of assumes fairly reasonably, like there's nothing built in for page views, for example. That's not an element in your markup because it knows that's already going to exist. And there's a couple of other inferred connections that basically after running through the whole thing, we need to basically loop back over the list to find out if there's any unmatched connections and make sure that we're matching them back up. The nice thing about that was, because I had to do the work there, I opened up some other opportunities. So one is to loop back over everything and see where it doesn't have any connections whatsoever. So that's what we've got with these nodes colored black here, which is not massive, but actually it's kind of nice to look at your account and see, well, you know, this thing is pretty big and messy. I've got a bunch of stuff that doesn't look like it's connected to anything else. Is that because something's broken? Or is that because we were using it 5 years ago and we haven't tried to use it for anything since, so maybe we should just get rid of that stuff? Or is it because we had a great solution for something 5 years ago that I'm trying to solve at the moment and we've forgotten that we had it? Because another thing about Tag Manager, I think, is it does tend to get inherited. You know, you start a new job and you take on someone else's Tag Manager account. They may have been doing some very smart things. They may have been doing some things that you would prefer they didn't. But one way or the other, there's a bunch of functionality already built in there, and it can be kind of difficult to work out. The other thing that I was quite pleased to be able to do, looping back over, and it's a bit harder to see at the moment, we'll switch this to black, is these. So the nodes that are currently colored in orange are anything that involves cookie setting or data layer.push. If we find that anywhere in the value of, usually it's going to be a tag, then we mark that as something that's starting to have an external impact. And then by looking at the value of the cookie it's setting, or by looking at the name of the data layer push event, we can connect those things to other things in the graph. So for example, this is connected to this trigger over here, and that's because this is setting a data layer. Yeah, this is creating a data layer event. I'm trying to remember the specific GTM setup we're looking at. This is creating a data layer event, which then causes that trigger to fire on another page, or rather on the same page. The reason I like this is the kind of connection that actually, even if we were directly in Tag Manager, we're not actually going to see, because it has some fairly nice signs, you know, when you've got a trigger that's being referenced by something else or a tag that's referencing a specific trigger, but it doesn't tend to touch any of this stuff. But aside from all that, this graph, to be honest, is not terribly useful right now. Like it's a bit of a mess. Looks a bit pretty, perhaps. It's a fairly nice way of showing people, look, this thing that we're working with is kind of big and complex and we're having to hold it all in our head. But it's not actually any of this masses in terms of how we make decisions. So the thing that I really wanted to do with this is choose a specific part of the graph and map out what it's impacting and or what's impacting it. So that's what we've got in the filter section here. So say we select a variable, and we'll just choose one from the drop-down list here. This is, so we've de-highlighted everything on the graph. I'm just going to turn this off briefly. We've turned off everything on the graph which is not in some way reliant on this variable here. And the idea is that when we're thinking, okay, we're going to make a change to this variable, we can filter to just that and then look through this list to make sure that everything that's on this list is not going to be broken by the thing we're changing. And again, you know, this visualization can be a bit messy, which is why we've got the tree view here. And this actually, so I thought I was going to have to do this manually, which could have been a massive pain, but there's another library. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but it's DAGRE. And it handles all of this kind of visualization for us, which is really nice. So we've got this, and this is kind of a simpler dependency chain. So as we're working our way through it, the idea is that we just kind of tick these nodes off by clicking on them. And if we find a variable which is impacting more, problem with redacting these things is the names become much less informative. Here we are. This one seems, yeah, this one's got some dependencies to it. So in this example, most of them, yeah, fairly straightforward. But one of the things that we're impacting here, this trigger, then impacts a bunch of tags. And one of those tags has a further dependency. So what we really want is once we've determined that this isn't going to be impacted, we can toggle that off and the rest of this chain just disappears. Like I say, what we're really looking for is a checklist. And if we want to do the opposite, so say we've found something that is broken and we want to work out what possibly could have broken it, we can switch to what could have broken this. And again, we can look into this tree view. It tends to actually be much neater this way around. So we can see all of these things feeding into that one tag. And we can work our way backwards through this to see the possible things that could have broken it. We also don't have to click on the node here. There is a sub-filter tab which shows us the different things which are impacted. And if we want to scroll over them all, I'll highlight them there. The last bit I added, which this is when I was starting to get into scope creep territory, to be honest, is the wildcard search function. So this searches through both the names that we've given to components and also the content of them in the JSON. So for example, say we find that a specific event used to be sent to GA regularly and for some reason isn't anymore, or for some reason we've started sending it twice as often. We can search for that event specifically, and this will pull up everything that mentions that in a list here, because it'll show up in the JSON that we're working with. So I'm not going to scroll through this because not all of this is anonymized, but we've got the raw JavaScript that's included in the tag here, and we've also got the raw JSON output further down, which we can look into if we want. And then the idea is that we can also push buttons to see, okay, what could have broken this, or what could this break as well. You might notice that these lines are a bit thicker than all of the others when we go to this transparency. This I racked my brains about for a while. I had no idea what was going on here. I thought for some reason I was miscoloring them or something, because basically the way to work with the way I chose to work with Sigma is you end up with a graph object. I'll see if actually I can.
Can we just pause for 1 second, Robin? Sure. I just want to take note of the fact that Jordan's head looked like it wanted to explode about 2 minutes ago. He had this look on his forehead where he was like, it was amazing.
This was, yeah, it's been amazingly overwhelming. It's like, holy guacamole, this is awesome.
Well, what's neat, what's for those of you listening down the road, Robin's like head of SEO for Brainlabs, which is like a big deal. And the fact that you're building tag manager stuff, I was like, what? like, like I'm building tools, right? So I'm building like automation tools and all this, but I was like, wow, like he's doing analytics stuff. I just thought it was, I never thought of going down this road. It didn't really, I didn't think of it as an area of opportunity for me to explore. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, neither did I. Until like I kind of ran into this, and like I say, I have to say, the Sigma.js library is just great. It's done so much of the heavy lifting for me here. Like I had this picture in my head to begin with, like, yeah, this feels like something that a tree graph or a node graph could help. And as you see, like in the kind of standard node graph view, it's kind of a jumbled mess, but it works as an initial UX. But yeah, I had no idea how to put it together. And so much of this was handled by that, even in terms of like interacting with the HTML5 canvas, which I haven't done masses of. Yeah. A bunch of this is just handled so nicely and neatly. So I think you can see the console now on my screen, right?
Yep.
So when you basically instantiate a graph object, and then once you've done that, as long as you've got your variable scoping right, you can bring the graph. You can reference this graph at any point and loop through all of these objects and then change the values as you want. So you can give them a bunch of values that you decide. So I've got things like, is this highlighted? Is this an externally facing node? These are some of the, so when we switch to tree view, I set all of the X and Y coordinates for everything that isn't highlighted to minus 10,000, just to move them all out of the way. So it's nice and neat. You can loop through all of them, change the X, change the Y, change the color, and then just refresh the graph, and it will show all of that in the canvas. You can probably see as well, when I switch to reset, instead of just flashing back to where they were, the nodes kind of swoop out. And that's another library that comes bundled with Sigma. There's an animation library. There's a couple of limitations there. So it's not possible to, I haven't found it possible to animate things like way off screen, like I want to do when I'm starting to switch into the tree view. But aside from that, really useful. And another bunch of things like the scroll over events are really accessible too. You can just add listeners to each of the nodes so that when I click each of these nodes, it checks the value of that node and runs some JavaScript with that value being a key part of the function. And when I scroll over like the subfilter, this is just hijacking the scroll over event on each of these. So as far as the graph is concerned, I'm currently scrolling over this node. So yeah, I've been really impressed with the amount that people have done with this, and how powerful this free library is just sitting around. Oh yeah, the other thing I was going to mention. So yeah, sometimes we look at some of the lines and they're way thicker than the others. And I was racking my brains because I was like, I'm sure I've set the transparency right on all of these. And it seems this really weird connection of lines to be suddenly much darker than everything else, until I realized these are cases when something is referencing something else multiple times. So it could be you have a few different times in the value of a tag, or it could be that you are responding to a few different possible values of a variable or something like that. And there's another library that lets us separate these out. So this gets a little bit messy when we're just looking at them all faded, but when you've got them colored, you can see the separate lines between them. And that gives you a really nice picture of, oh, okay, actually, not only do I need to check this once, I probably need to check it 5 or 6 times to make sure I'm not breaking any of these other contingencies that are flowing to this. Although I did find it a bit annoying, so I've got a way of getting rid of the extra lines if they're just getting in the way.
Okay, so you spent 6,000 hours building this graphing tool, and you solved your business case solution or problem. Did you find that do you think, how much time do you think it's going to save you each time you need to use it?
It's a good question. I think that I'm fairly hopeful that it's going to save a bit of time. My real hope actually is that it saves not just time, but also headspace. Because my concern with this stuff, as I say, is not, it's not a problem that we need to do the work. The work needs to be done and the work needs to be done properly. The thing that I don't like is the idea of our focus being drained because we're trying to remember something that would actually be done better by a computer. And like that's the kind of thing I tend to hammer with Jupyter and stuff as well. Like we are very good at stuff. We're very good at a lot of stuff. Yeah. Like as a species. But what we aren't good at is holding a whole bunch of stuff in our head at the same time. Like that is what computers are so good at, that you can just run it casually in some JavaScript in your browser, and it can just handle this level of information that we wouldn't be able to hold ourselves. I think the other side of it for me was I hadn't, aside from my slash escape game, I hadn't really done any JavaScript projects. Like I've been fairly Python focused, and this was a really nice excuse to play around with canvases, also like actually get to grips with variable scoping and stuff in JavaScript, which I have to say is so much better than Python. Like recursive functions in JavaScript are an absolute dream in comparison to the rubbish you have to go through in Python to make sure everything's lining up properly. So yeah, the even aside from what we get out of it day to day, it was nice to just dig in and learn a bit.
Dale, do you have anything to share? Maybe.
Yeah, I guess some questions come out of this. I see a natural extension for this would be to do like a tag verification process. So I'm not sure what's available via the API but checking the last date that a variable was used or a trigger, I think would be really handy to know, so that you can run some analysis to go, well, this variable is actually no longer being populated because the data layer, is not being pushed through. Would be really handy to know whether or not you've got a tag manager account that is just growing in size and complexity, but is no longer actively being used.
Yeah, enjoyed that. But yeah, that's a really great idea, actually. So at the moment, this doesn't use the Tag Manager API at all. It's basically just, if you go into the admin section, you can just get like a JSON dump of everything in the account, which can be quite nice if you're having to set up a new account for a new site or something like that. But yeah, I think you're...
Harvard has a similar, I think that way the duplication of an account and stuff like that can do the similar one. This also reminds me of our infrastructure tool in the graphing and the ability to sort of isolate individual nodes and then check the stats on that. And I think that the library that you've used is similar to the result that the tool that we use is called Epsagon, and they have an architecture view where it uses all of your resources in your AWS account. And I can flick you or I can show you if you've got 30 seconds. I can see.
Yeah. Love to see, actually.
Dale, I think one of the things that you do amazingly well is architect. And I think for people who are designing or building serverless functions, this. More of this, please.
Yeah,
So
this is great.
this this is the architecture currently of the production environment. And what I think is cool in this is that isolation effect and then the stats, depending on what you're trying to achieve of that interconnectivity between nodes. And so there's that opportunity to really see that, okay, this is how the systems connect together, because once you start to sort of layer things on top, as you explained, it's hard to get that mental model of how do all the pieces fit together to provide the overall understanding of what we're doing.
I'm loving those success and error stats and stuff that you get when you click into those nodes. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it actually highlights some of the past and stuff based upon the error status and things. So if you wanted to actually understand, the correlation of what the downflow or downstream effects of that, definitely is helpful. I don't spend a lot of time in here. I guess this is really just that process of, reminding yourself of where that particular piece might fit into the larger puzzle, because on a daily basis, you're so focused on an individual process and an isolated component. And you can drill down on this, but I mean, saying the time frame, I think is really cool, and something that you could extend, if you had a use case for it. For yours would be understanding how that evolves over time. I think that's what would be helpful from a practitioner's point of view, would be, a cleanup process from Tag Manager, because as you said, the inherited sort of Tag Manager account, no one knows whether it's still active or not.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There is that big, I don't know if this is being used somewhere thing. This is me veering slightly into a potentially controversial rant, actually. One of the things I know is being talked about in GA4 is the ability to rename things in the GA interface. So like Tag Manager sends an event with one name, and then you set a rule in GA that it's going to be renamed to something else. And I feel like that's something that sounds great to begin with, but actually is probably a massive nightmare in the making. Someone's going to inherit that GA account, and they're going to have to then unpick another level of, I have no idea why this thing is doing this thing. Like, where is this coming from? So yeah, I feel like we're consistently running into, exactly as you say, all these kind of legacy issues where we have no idea if something's important or not.
Dale, do you feel like you have any of your Lucid chart stuff that you can share that can help people understand how to architect a serverless function? Because for those of you guys, and by you guys, I just mean for everyone who's listening, Dale has been my mentor in teaching me how to do this stuff. And he's always taught me that the value of learning how to do any of this is learning how to architect. It's like, you can always hire somebody to build things, but learning how to architect is like the money skill. Do you have anything that you can share?
The
process?
Probably not. I mean, the process for me is mapping out infrastructure to business logic. And then from there, I guess it's understanding what you want to achieve in the flow. So I'm trying to deal with child in the background. So probably not something I can share right now, but happy to go through that process in the future.
Yeah. Do you need to go be daddy?
Yeah, I think I need to be a parent right now.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, shoot us or leave or whatever, but it's fantastic connecting once again. No, it's like he's still with us. Cool. So, Robin, what else you got to share? What else you do? Oh, Jordan, do you want to show Big Watson stuff? And if knows the answer, by the way.
I would, but it's broken right now.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'd love to hear about it all the same.
Yeah, sure. So, the entire premise of it is, how do we identify kind of two things? One is internal linking opportunities, not on a exact anchor tag basis, but more on a contextual basis. And the second thing is, how do we identify good quality backlinks, again, from a contextual basis rather than a quantitative basis. So what I'm playing with right now is running either a client site or a set of URLs from, say, Hrefs through Big Watson, saving it to BigQuery, and then analyzing the relationship between, say, multiple sets of URLs, to be able to say, hey, these 3 pages have this keyword or are about this specific topic or category or has a specific entity within it. So there's an opportunity to, develop some internal links across those pages. From a backlink perspective, it's like, hey, from a topical relevancy standpoint, this page pointing to us, is it talking about what the client has to offer? Or is it, like a casino, pharma, adult related topic? So that's something that I've been working on for the last little while. Unfortunately, it's broken. I'd love to show it off, but unable to do so at this point in time.
I mean, that sounds like a fantastic trailer for the next Hangout, right?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
I was telling Noah about this. Like, one of the reasons why I moved away from the serverless design architecture is because I was doing a test run on a client's website, and I accidentally DDoS'd their website through Watson, and not having like an endpoint for a specific function. So it'll just continue running over and over and over again until it gets a 200 status. But a big learning for me, for sure.
Definitely. That is the kind of thing that, like, your non-technical SEO is never going to run into that problem, right? Of DDoSing the client site. Good effort. That sounds like such a cool project, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like the internal linking thing, like that crops up every so often. I feel like there were a few tweets recently where someone was like, state your unpopular or your controversial SEO opinion, and people were saying, yeah, internal linking, it's just massively overlooked. Yeah, and I have to agree. Like, consistently we look for a bunch of different opportunities, and so often that kind of thing is overlooked. So yeah, this sounds really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, eventually I'd love to pair it with, like a Sitebulb crawl or a Screaming Frog crawl or something to find what the internal page rank is. And what I love about Sitebulb is they provide you the location of the URL of the link. So it's like, okay, is it actually in the body, or is it, in the header or in the footer? So you have a bit more context as to the opportunities site-wide. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Sitebulb. It also feels like, to be fair, I'm a big fan of Screaming Frog as well. But it does feel like Sitebulb came onto the scene, and all of a sudden a bunch of this like completely different approach to crawling was cropping up from even the tools we already knew about. So I feel like they've been such a great addition to the industry.
Totally.
Robin, how do you like to set the table or set the foundation when you're taking on a new account? Do you have a process that's uniform? What's uniform? I know that everything's bespoke for you, but like, what do you like to do every time, or guide the team to do every time?
Yeah, I have a few things that I'm particularly passionate about. I think that I would attribute every client I've retained and pretty much every upsell I've ever got to always having a 3-month plan. When I lead on accounts, and it's also really awesome to see like when I've worked with other people and they pick it up as well, I think, and it seems to be working. Every single client call as well, we start by saying the 3-month plan. Like it takes 10 seconds, but it just feels like everyone then knows the context of that call. We're all bought into the things that we're doing over the next 3 months. And people had the opportunity to say, oh, actually, you know, I'm not as keen on what we're doing in January. I've got other ideas. Or all of a sudden something's cropped up. But it sets this really nice kind of shared understanding of what we've got on the books. And it means that when we start to have conversations about other work we want to bring in, we're already on the same page in terms of saying, yeah, so this is a prioritization decision. This isn't the agency wants to do this, or the agency is being inflexible, or the agency doesn't say they have enough time. This is, you know, we've got a roadmap we've all agreed to, and we want to expedite this other thing, so let's add it on as another project, or let's push back this thing that we don't think is as valuable. I feel like, yeah, that's the main thing that I stick to every account, and it serves me so well.
You know what? That's music to my ears, because I'm shifting all of our SEO and PPC efforts into 3-month sprints. So thank you very, very much for that validation.
Great to hear.
And in terms of how I've structured accounts, and I feel like I have a lot to learn listening to you talk about this, is my strategies have not looked like a Gantt chart over a year, or water flow where it's like leading from stage to stage. And it's more like thinking up a set of tasks that we're going to do each month because we found those correlate with success over the long term. But it's boring. And it works, but I also feel like it's not necessarily tied to different stages of the maturity of the relationship and the engagement. So I feel like I have something to learn there.
I mean, like I think both are good ways to approach it. You know, the 3-month plan or the year-long plan, or I mean, honestly, like if you've got a set of things that are consistently achieving success, I mean, that's great. Like, you know, there is a bunch of things that we know, you know, targeting a topic effectively and building out content for that topic, that's going to consistently get us there. And to be honest, no, it sounds like you've got enough spicy stuff in the background with all this cloud function to probably keep you occupied.
You know what's neat? On the content side, we started working in the ski vertical, alpine skiing vertical. I've never worked in the ski industry. And we built our first piece of content for that. And I'll show you what we built. And I was really worried. I was like, oh shit, is this going to work? You know, like, I'll show it to you, because I was like super concerned that we weren't going to build something that was good enough. And I'm looking for it. I think we rank in the top 10 for it. We don't rank up position 1, but we're in the top 10. And we didn't do any link building yet, but I'll show it to you. And what I thought was neat, is that okay, guys? Am I hijacking?
Sure. Yeah, okay. No, go ahead.
So this is the pattern, one of the patterns. Am I on the right site? No, this isn't us. And we're learning the ski vertical. So like, and if we tack on years, if we go like 2021, I think we're going to rank in the top 5 or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I could totally be wrong too. There we are. So we built this one. And this whole like pattern of like focusing on quality, and Jordan's seen this whole sticky nav approach that I use all the time. And we drive these two H2s so that the H2s show up underneath the meta description and SERPs. You know, like being over the top in terms of how much content we're producing. It's, I mean, how many questions and answers we're trying to get to. And then we're getting into all the different sections of the catalog, hoping to get these to show up for featured snippets. It's been really fun to break into that vertical.
Enjoyed. And have you found much movement on the featured snippets yet? I mean, top 5 within a short amount of time of launching the pages, you know, proof in the pudding, right?
Yeah, without any kind of extra work. Yeah, for sure. I think how to choose the best all mountain skis. Let's see. I haven't been tracking it. Let's be honest. I haven't been tracking it. But I looked for something. What did I do? I was like, all mountain ski. I think for buyer's guide, and I don't think that the search volume is good enough to be all stoked on this, but I think we rank #1 for buyer's guide, which is good. I think that's a good step. We need to then just branch out,
nice,
get more of the keywords. Yeah, so I'm
that's
enjoying
cool.
the content side. I like building because I used to do a lot of design. So, and I didn't do a ton of writing, but I understood like how to like try and treat a topic thoroughly. It doesn't mean that I'm building the best content. It just means that I run, I write like I talk, which is like, fire hose. You know what I mean? Like I just don't stop. But I think it works pretty well for a lot of these types of things.
No, this is cool. So you were talking about things like the sticky nav and stuff you're putting on the page. So are you building these pages yourself?
Yeah. Well, so what's funny is I'll build the template the first time, and then and what was really cool about this project was that we have not done long form content on Shopify before. And we had worked not exclusively, but semi-exclusively on another platform. And we had to take how we build things and to go from working inside the Bootstrap framework, the CSS framework Bootstrap, and then move it into their kind of custom built one. And we had to figure out what widgets were available, how we could like transform all of our Bootstrap stuff into this one, which works very differently. And then we had to come up with components that matched the way that they had the site set up. They had some things going on with how they were using buttons before that were not necessarily best practice, that were not scaling well on mobile. And so we had to, so we had to be like, hey, it's probably better to do it as a drop down, and we work with the client to teach them how to do that.
Sweet.
But
Noah, are you using any like Edge SEO stuff on Shopify right now?
No, I have not.
Robin, any on your side?
So the last time I was doing Edge SEO is when I was working on what is now Search Pilot with clients. I think I'm going to try and start putting pointer stuff on my own site with Cloudflare, just to play around with it a bit, because I feel like I haven't been able to plumb the depths on that properly. Have you been playing around with it much?
No, I haven't touched it yet. I have a couple clients on Shopify, so I'm just wondering if anyone's played with it yet, because it is still kind of experimental. So I don't want to do things and just tank rankings in the site and all that kind of stuff.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
Yeah, like it definitely. I feel like we get away with it in Tag Manager, but definitely when we start to go into Edge SEO stuff, it is like becoming a dev agency, and I feel like we take on the liability that's associated with that. If we're making changes to the site in stream, then breaking something is 100% on us, and we're completely circumventing all their QA stuff, sometimes intentionally. So yeah, definitely get the idea. Definitely understand wanting to get to grips with it.
I'm smiling because before I joined 2 Octobers, I would speak at meetups and say, hey, this is how I use JavaScript to like edit their structured data. And I'd watch people in the audience like start to like get nervous and anxious. And one of the 2 principals at 2 Octobers, Nico, like, I'm like, do it, let's move on. Like I'm like Mr. Hack. And he's like, whoa, take it down a notch. Like, no, we are not going to do that. We are not going to crawl the admin of the back end of their website with Puppeteer and use that to build a product feed. And like, that is not something we're going to do, because that's like full on not sustainable. Like, he's like, whoa, take it down a notch. And I'm like, do it. So,
but it's just so much fun, isn't it?
I love, you know what? I break so many things. But you learn so much in the process. I mean, so I'll never forget. And Jordan, I don't remember if you and I were at this same talk. It was one of the two local SEOs, 16 or 17, the MozCon local, where Darren Shaw was up on stage and talking about why Black Hat SEO is bad. And the anecdote that he shared was, yeah, maybe I can get away with something this one time, and maybe I can have a competitive advantage this one campaign. But one time I was involved in a campaign. This is him telling the story. I think I'm saying this correctly, and my memory's not failing. But one time I was involved in a campaign, and it was my neighbor's business, and my neighbor's business tanked, and he had to lay off his staff, and his business went under. And for me, that's why, like, in SEO land, I always try and stay white hat. Although some of the stuff that I've shared with you guys, maybe I'm doing stuff that's gray hat. I'm definitely not black hat. But on the dev side, I hear what you're saying, where that's where you're like crossing that line. And it's like, ooh, am I doing something that can harm their business? And as long as the answer is no to that, then I'm okay. Long term.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I feel like I feel like it's more obvious in the case of doing stuff like Edge SEO, but actually whatever we do, it's got to be a collaboration. Like, if at any point the attitude is, this is 100% on agency X, something's gone wrong long before that. Because if the people who have got skin in the game feel like we've taken something out of their hands and we're saying, no, you do your thing, we're going to do this, and we'll tell you what the results are down the road. You're not involved in this, we're doing it. That's the scenario where, you know, we're not getting buy-in from senior people there. We're not helping our point of contact level up and feel like they're engaged in what we're doing. And we're probably missing stuff because, like, they're the experts in the business, right? Like, we're experts at messing around with this SEO type stuff, but they're in it day to day. They know what the problems are. They know what the priorities are of the business. They know their customers so well. And It's so easy for us to miss stuff.
So I was having a client relationship management issue where I felt like I knew what was right. I was pushing a solution that did not align with client goals, and it created a ton of friction. Even though I was positive that they were going to lose money by going their own way or doing what they wanted to do, I told Robin this story, and his response was super smart. Boom.
It was my standard intellectual Ponzi scheme where I take something that someone else has told me and pass it on as though it's my own. So yeah, I ran into something just like this when I was starting out with one of my early accounts, actually. And it was actually Ben Estes, who is fortunately still part of our team, and that I was talking to. And basically I was saying, look, you know, it was to do with, it was such a small thing. It was to do with canonical tags. I wanted us to automate the way the canonical tags were being sorted. The beleaguered dev at my client's dev team said, look, I'm going to update them manually. And I was trying to say, look, it's not that I don't trust you, but also you don't have time. We need to do this through another way. And I was chatting to Ben, and he basically said to me, look, you might think that you're able to do his job better than he can. But at the end of the day, like, he's the one invested here. And when we view our jobs as making the clients do X, it totally changes what we think success is. And often it means that we see ourselves as not succeeding, even when we're doing everything to get a valuable result. When we instead think about our jobs to be to help the client come to a decision, to help the client come to an informed decision, that totally changes how we view success. Like if I've given my client clear understanding of my perspective and they decide to go in another way, that's still a valuable decision because they've got the SEO perspective and they will have a reason. They'll have a solid business reason to go in another direction, even if it's not a solid SEO reason. And because we've been able to talk that way about it, because we've been able to have that understanding, they're able to make that decision and move on to the next thing. And maybe because they're able to make that quicker, they come back around to this quicker and we're able to get to the SEO result we want more quickly at the end of the day, even if we don't end up making the decision that I would make tomorrow.
Preach.
And the other part of this was decisions are all made in their own timeline and in their own ways that align with their own ways and needs of making those decisions. And you have to let people make those decisions on their own timelines and in their own ways. Even if we think of it as them experiencing loss, that's them experiencing their process. Did I paraphrase that right from last time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Like the other part of it for me was, all the way back then, I felt like they were losing out on so much because these decisions were taking so long. And actually, it was another consultant who explained to me, Tim Allen, not the actor, who explained, like the contribution is still valuable. Like we think of it as you could have done it today and instead you're doing it in 6 months' time. Whereas in reality, it was always going to happen in 6 months' time. We're just working our way through that process, like vaguely nihilistic, fatalistic, but I think it is actually also a really good way to think about it.
And it was the kind of thing that when I heard it, I was like, ugh, why didn't I align to their business goals faster? Was how I thought through it. And I was like, why did I create friction? Ugh. And then I was also like client goals are not, I've always come into every engagement like my job is to make them money. Like that's it. That's all I think about is making them money. And my perspective on how we were going to get there with this particular client was aligned with a couple of expectations, and what they wanted was not aligned around that goal. And it was more around brand, and it was more around image, and it was more around user experience. And we had a different opinion around what was better user experience, which was the root core problem. But anyway, fascinating stuff.
All right, guys, I do have to go.
Got a jet. It's super late. What time is it? Is it almost midnight where you are, Robin? What time is it there?
11:15.
Oh, 11:15. It's not super bad. Your girlfriend's probably all pissed though, let's be honest. Although you're in the bedroom, aren't you?
I am, yeah. She's getting a break from me. We've been playing Guacamole all evening, so she's probably made a bunch of progress in my absence.
Nice.
Right.
This was super fun. This is really great. Let's do this again. I think this is a great way for me anyway.
Yes, please.
Vacation. I have Christmas week off too. So if you guys are bored, then that'll be fun. It's not like we're going to go do anything fun. I'm stuck at home. It sucks, but it is what it is. All right, guys, this was amazing. Another great episode of Agency Automators. Everybody, thanks for another fun episode of Agency Automators. Jordan, as per usual.
Thanks a lot.
You were the man. Thank you. Robin, amazing. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for being there. Everybody.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks,
Bye.
Noah. Thanks, Dale, if you can hear us. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.